This is your world of business. Let's get the program going. Exotic Partners, a research organization based in London, recently released a report suggesting the devaluation of the Nigerian naira is imminent. In the view of Exotic Partners research analysts, 25% devaluation of the naira is close at hand. According to Exotics, a shift in forex policy is consistent with comments made in the budget speech and with the underlying targets presented by President Muhammadu Buhari to the National Assembly. The analysts maintain that a likely midpoint for the new banned naira-dollar relationship will be between 240 and 250. Joining me from Exotics in London this afternoon to talk about this report is the chief economist, Alan Cameron. Alan, good afternoon to you. We appreciate your time.
Good afternoon.
Yeah, thank you. Straight question. How imminent is imminent for naira devaluation?
I mean, I think at this point it's just a question of timing, and the most likely outcome looks probably like at the MPC meeting later this month. I think there was a chance that it was going to be done at the beginning of this year, but maybe the timing didn't line up properly. We know that that Christine Lagarde from the IMF was visiting the country, so I think maybe they didn't want to throw the markets into turmoil. But my belief is that the decision to devalue is basically been made, and now it's just a question of when it will actually happen.
Some analysts have suggested between 10% or 20% devaluation of the naira. Now, you folks are suggesting 25. It looks like things are getting worse. So the key question is, what percentage fall do you anticipate, and how did you arrive at 25% haircut?
Well, I think it's largely a question of market confidence. It's about what exchange rate will allow you to stabilize your reserves position. And I think, the feedback that I've gotten since writing this note and the feedback which I've gathered over the course of, the last year, let's say, suggests that 10% is just not going to do it. And I think that's consistent with the experience that you've seen in other countries. It's going to take a lot more than that. Now, there's a lot of moving parts in the external accounts. The oil price is one of them, but there's also others. It, depends how much leakages are happening. It depends what foreign portfolio investors are going to do. And largely depends how, domestic investors are going to try and position for this. So I think, when you look at the variables which are in the financial account, and those are usually the faster moving parts of the external accounts, you need to set the currency to a level that people are going to find credible. And I think right now 220 is just not credible. It's going to take a little bit more than that. And I've heard a range of estimates that goes from anything saying no devaluation at all up until 300. So I think probably where I sit in that range of opinions is somewhere close to the middle.
Alan, look at your prognosis. You're talking about 240, 250. We've seen 270. You released a report around November last year in which Exotic Partners, you look at what the likely scenario would be for Buhari's administration. So we've seen 276, we've seen 260 or 265. Now you say 25% devaluation is what you think. Now, don't you think some analysts are correct that naira-dollar relationship could go as high as 500?
I think 500 is very outlandish. I don't think that's the case. But, to be clear, if you look at the long-term history of most emerging market currencies, it's generally downwards. And in this case, it's about finding a level that the market is going to believe in. We know right now that the black market is pricing around 265 naira to the dollar. Over the holidays, that possibly went up to 280. You need to find a level where the spread is tolerable. So if you look at where things are right now, the official rate's 197, and the black market's at 265. I think the opportunities for round tripping are just too big to ignore, and there's no way to properly police that. So they will need to move to a level which people find credible. And I think if you're talking about a spread of 5% in the official and the parallel market, tolerable. But if you're talking about a spread of 40%, it just doesn't work.
This is one of the things you wrote in this report, saying ultimately Exotic, or we think the degree of devaluation required is a question of market confidence. Talk to us about this statement.
Well, it just depends. I mean, I think one of the major things that can happen if you devalue, there's been a lot of foreign money sitting on the sidelines precisely because they expected devaluation. So if you move to a level where they think, well, the upside in my investment comfortably outweighs the downside on this currency, then that in itself will begin to the process of rebuilding reserves. And then at least once that begins to happen, you can establish some confidence in the stability of the peg. So that's what I mean when I say market confidence. It depends how people interpret it. So for example, if you move the currency to 220, I think the general belief would be that this is not enough. And we'd be stuck with the same problem, and the market would continue asking for more. Whereas if you move to around 250, I think at least some people will be convinced that the opportunities now look good, the valuations are compelling, and we're willing to come back into this market, and reserves will be rebuilt. But until we get to that point, I think we're stuck in the current conundrum where everybody expects a devaluation, therefore foreign money is being withheld, domestic money is trying to get out, and until we get a move on this, I think that the country is kind of pulling sideways. And in some ways, what you see happening in the exchange rate is probably putting a blind spot on many of the other good things that are being done by the Buhari administration. And that's really a shame. I think that they've risked too much on this FX policy, and it's just, the time has come to move. And I believe that decision is probably made internally, and it's just a question of time until we see it in the market.
Alan, I'll find one. The central bank here has been doing demand-side management for the last 1 year plus. We've defended the Naira over the last several years. Do you think we should just move to devaluation, or we should move to the next level, which is float the Naira somehow before going for a devaluation? How do you think we should proceed?
Personally, I'm not an advocate of floating the currency. I think, Nigeria is, as Christine Lagarde said yesterday, and I thought it was a good point which she made, and it's one we've argued with clients. Devaluation is only part of the picture. That needs to be accompanied by other structural reforms, and I think the country has made great progress in other structural reforms, particularly in agriculture. So I think you need to probably try and repeg at a lower level while you continue those structural reforms instead of pulling the Russia route where they just devalued the currency. But there's no right answer on this. There's a debate amongst economists. It just happens to my personal view that what suits the country best at this stage of development would be to move to a lower level and try and repeg there.
Okay, thank you, Alan. We're just about 2 weeks away from January 24-25 monetary policy meeting of the central bank. Thank you very much. We'll come back to you on or before that date. See how imminent the Naira devaluation. Alan Cameron, chief economist at Exotic Partners in London. So let's talk a little bit about Nigeria continuing for ways to reduce its reliance on oil price now getting crushed below $33 a barrel. Nigerians with entrepreneurial spirit are coming up with business plans that could encourage investment. Look at the story of a Nigerian entrepreneur.
Afyong Williams is on track to becoming one of Nigeria's young billionaires with her fruit processing company, Real Fruits. Established in 2014, the company packages, brands, and processes locally grown fruits. Williams has grown from packaging the products in her home to running a small factory which supplies 80 stores in Nigeria. After working for a small business incubator in South Africa, Afyong Williams returned to Nigeria to set up the snack and beverage company. Afyong's business has grown to employ 17 people. Using personal funds as well as loans from family and friends, she started out running the business from her home. She says she saw a gap in the market and decided to capitalize on the opportunity.
Well, I was actually attracted to this sector for a number of reasons. Firstly, I believe there's untapped opportunity in processing and value addition of raw materials. And I also believe that, it's a very budding sector. There's a lot of opportunity, as well as the job creation, which I think is quite important to me as an entrepreneur, to be able to, play in an industry that would create a lot of jobs.
Although the fruits are dried in Ogun State, Real Fruits packages the fruits in Lagos and distributes the products to various stores across the country. The company exports some of its produce to West African countries and plans to export to Europe and the United States in future. They are also working on plans to find a $600,000 investment to build a bigger plant in 2016 that would see them grow their own fresh fruits. Afyong says getting into the business was challenging at first.
it was not easy introducing something new into the market, such as dried fruits. The market has taken a while to accept it, but I think we're getting to the stage where people like the products and want more of them and are buying more of it, and so that has just necessitated our growth. We do have big ambitions to scale into a world-class factory that allows us to also export some of our dried fruit. So that's our next big goal as a company, and we're really seeking investment for it, and it's all part of sort of our ambitions to really be a large fruit processing player in Nigeria.
For her, Nigeria needs to address structural issues in the agricultural sector in order for agribusinesses to thrive.
I think agriculture, the sector primarily, is obviously more complicated than people anticipate. I think there's so many issues with the sort of structural issues with the sector. So for any sort of I think success, it would take a lot of planning and understanding, and also a lot of technical understanding, which I think is one of the big missing pieces. Even from farming all the way to processing, there are certain standards, there are certain methodologies that need to be used to arrive at a very good product.
Affiong Williams is looking to make real fruits a big player in the agribusiness at a time when the government is encouraging investment in agriculture in the country to boost the sector and reduce reliance on oil exports at a time of low crude prices.
All right, we'll pick it up from the world of oil after the break. Stick around. Damilola Akibami, Senior Research Analyst from Financial Derivatives Company.